My daughter told me I was just the babysitter, so I stopped showing up. I gave her everything. But after hearing those words, I realized she never saw me as a father, just a convenience. So I made a move that changed everything forever. I will tell you how everything unfolded. First, let me quickly thank you for your continuous support. This means a lot to us. If you enjoy the stories we share, kindly subscribe to this channel. It will be great if you can leave a comment on which city you are watching from. We might just give you a shout out in our next story. Today's special shout out goes to James Elton from South Carolina. We are glad you enjoy our stories. Now let's go deeper into the story. I never thought a single sentence could get a man my age. 68 years, and I'd seen it all. Watched a woman I loved fade from cancer, raised a daughter alone with trembling hands and tired eyes, worked 2 jobs until my knees gave out. But nothing, not grief, not exhaustion, not even loneliness, ever left me hollow the way my daughter's words did that Tuesday afternoon. It started like any other day. I pulled into the daycare parking lot in my faded gray Camry, the one with the rattling AC and coffee stains that never quite scrubbed out of the console. The front office always smelled like Lysol and apple juice. I signed my name in the visitor log, waved to the young receptionist who wore lipstick too bright for 10 a.m., and waited near the cubbies where little jackets and backpacks hung like tiny, colorful ghosts of chaos. Grandpa Ray, one of the toddlers, yelled, not mine, but I always responded with a chuckle and a high five. When they brought Lily out, her curls wild and her sneakers half-tied, she ran into my arms like she always did. That part never changed. She didn't see a babysitter. She saw me. Her pops. Her bedtime story voice. Her walking encyclopedia of random animal facts. I kissed her forehead and swung her onto my hip. That's when the receptionist laughed lightly and said it, offhand, like she was saying the weather looked nice. Babysitters are the real MVPs, huh? I smiled, politely, though something twisted in my chest. I'm her grandfather. Oh, of course, she said, suddenly awkward, her smile shrinking. Sorry, I just meant, you're always here. Every day. I nodded, tight-lipped, and walked out. Later that evening, I asked Tessa about it. I didn't mean to make it a thing, but it had stuck to me like burrs on an old sweater. We were in her kitchen, white countertops, fancy fridge with touchscreen, everything expensive but sterile. I was washing Lily's lunch containers while Tessa typed on her phone. Hey, I said, drying my hands, do you think of me as her babysitter? She didn't even look up. Well, technically, yeah. I stared at her. I'm her grandfather. Yes, but Dad, you help when I need you. That's what this is. Help. You're not her parent. That's when I knew. It wasn't just a careless word. It was a lens she looked through. I raised you, I said quietly. She sighed. I know. And I'm grateful. But Lily's my daughter, my responsibility. You're helping me. That's all. That's all. She went back to typing, texting, whatever. I walked out without another word. I didn't sleep that night. I sat in my recliner, the one I bought back in '98 after the plant laid me off, and stared at the dark TV screen. I kept replaying the sentence in my head, turning it over like a stone I couldn't get rid of. That's all. All those years, walking her to school in the rain, packing sandwiches with sticky notes that said, "You got this," selling my wedding band to help her with tuition, and I was just the help. Just the ride. The backup plan. The babysitter. The next morning, I didn't show up. I didn't text. I didn't call. I made a pot of coffee, sat on my porch, and watched the streets stay empty. By noon, my phone had 7 missed calls. By 3, it had 11. I turned it off. The truth hurt, but not as much as living in denial. I realized how often I had pushed my own needs aside just to be available, to drop everything when she needed a sitter, a bill paid, a last-minute ride to the airport, all under the banner of love. But love isn't just doing. It's being seen. For the next 3 days, I avoided everything familiar. I didn't go to the grocery store I knew she shopped at. I didn't call the neighbors who always passed messages back and forth to her. I just wandered. I found myself sitting in the back of a local library, flipping through a book on community service programs. Not because I had a plan, but because I needed to believe there was somewhere else I could matter. That's when I saw a flyer. Volunteers needed, local youth center. I took it down, folded it, and tucked it in my wallet. At home, I boxed up a few things: Lily's extra clothes, her favorite cup, some drawings she left on my fridge. I labeled it for Tessa, drove to her house just before dawn, and left it on her porch. I didn't ring the bell. I didn't wait for her to open the door. The next day, I called the youth center. A woman named Marla answered, chipper and kind. She asked if I had any experience with kids. I laughed. I raised one. It didn't quite go how I hoped. She didn't press. She said they needed someone to help with after-school reading hours, maybe play chess with some of the older ones. I told her I'd be there Monday. And I was. For the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like I was filling a gap. I was just there. Present. Useful. Respected. By Friday, one of the boys, Marcus, asked me to come to his school play. You're like my pops now, he said, grinning. I went. I cheered louder than anyone in the audience. At the end of the night, I checked my phone. Tessa had sent a single message. Are you okay? Can we talk? I didn't respond. Because maybe I wasn't the babysitter anymore. Maybe I never had been. I never made a grand announcement. No dramatic farewell or passive-aggressive send-off. I simply stopped showing up. Quietly. Without ceremony. Because that's how I'd been disappearing for years. One unreciprocated favor at a time. One unanswered, thank you. One missed birthday dinner where Tessa forgot I was still a man with needs, not a convenience on call. By the time the second Monday came around and I wasn't there to pick Lily up, the calls got angrier. Dad, I can't do this right now. You need to let me know what's going on. I didn't. I poured myself a glass of water, sat on the porch with my book, and let the voicemail sit like untouched mail. It wasn't vengeance. Not really. It was preservation. I'd given her so much of me that I'd forgotten how to be mine. That was the part that embarrassed me the most. Not her words, but how quickly I realized she might have been right. I had turned myself into the babysitter, just to stay close. The youth center was a breath I hadn't known I'd been holding. The kids were rough around the edges, loud, sometimes rude, but they were honest. And more than that, they saw me. I was Mr. Ray. Now, the old guy who brought his own chessboard and always carried peppermints in his pocket. They laughed when I told stories about the 70s. They asked questions. They listened. No one handed me a child and walked out the door without looking back. When I was there, I wasn't invisible. Every Wednesday, I led reading hour. The kids sprawled out on beanbags while I read from old paperback classics, Hatchet, Where the Red Fern Grows, Charlotte's Web. One afternoon, a girl named Kiera stayed behind, fidgeting with her sleeves. My dad's gone too, she said softly. I'm not gone, I said. Just relocated emotionally. She laughed. She was only 10, but she got it. That night, I got another message from Tessa. You're being dramatic, Dad. You're punishing me. This isn't fair to Lily. It made me clench my jaw. Not because she was wrong. Lily didn't deserve the cold space that had settled between us, but because she still didn't get it. She still believed this was about logistics, that I was throwing a tantrum because I wasn't being used properly. She didn't see the aching years that led to this moment. It wasn't about fairness. It was about recognition. I wrote back for the first time. One sentence. Please make other arrangements. I won't be available. I stared at it for 10 minutes before hitting send. The next day, a small box showed up on my porch. Inside were framed photos of Lily and me. Father's Day brunches, zoo trips, her 4th birthday party where we both wore paper crowns. I held the frames for a long time. Then I placed them face down in a drawer. I couldn't throw them away, but I couldn't keep them out either. Not yet. Word spread among our tiny family network. My sister called from Nevada. Tessa says you're cutting her off. I'm not cutting her off, I said flatly. I'm just done doing it all quietly. She's your daughter. I know that. But being her father stopped meaning something to her a long time ago. My sister didn't argue. She sighed. We both knew she'd seen this storm brewing for years. She once told me that Tessa only called when she needed something. I used to defend it. She's busy. She's a single mom. She has so much on her plate. Now I saw how many excuses I'd made for the emptiness. At the center, I started mentoring Marcus. He was 13, thin, defensive, smart as hell. He didn't talk much at first, just kind of hovered while the other kids read. One afternoon, he asked if I knew anything about fixing bikes. I did. I'd patched up Tessa's more times than I could count. So I bought a used tire pump and showed up on Saturday morning with a toolkit. By noon, we'd fixed 3 of the center's broken bikes. Marcus actually smiled. He asked if I wanted to come to his school science fair the next week. I told him I'd be honored. He called me Pops in front of his friends. That night, I sat on my couch, utterly still. And for the first time in months, maybe years, I didn't feel used. I felt useful. Tessa called again 2 nights later. I didn't answer. Then she emailed. A longer message this time. Accusations mixed with desperation. You're abandoning us. Lily asks where you are every day. I don't know what you want me to say. That I'm sorry? Fine. I'm sorry. I was stressed. I said something stupid. But you're being cruel now. I reread that line. You're being cruel now. And it stung, but only because I remembered how many times I had let her words slide to avoid exactly that label. Cruel. Let me tell you something about cruelty. It's not found in one-off decisions. It's cumulative. It builds over time like sediment. One missed thank you. One casual dismissal. One too many. You're just the babysitter. And eventually, even a man like me, who stayed silent through funerals, layoffs, and watching his only child forget what he gave up, finds himself boiling inside a cracked pot. The cruel thing would have been to keep showing up and pretending I was fine. So I stopped. The sun kept rising. The world didn't end. And for the first time in years, I got up each day feeling like I belonged to myself. Silence, when chosen, can be strangely soothing. For the first time in decades, I wasn't bracing myself for the next favor, the next emergency masked as affection. My phone stayed silent, and so did I. Tessa's name still lit up the screen now and then, but the frequency dwindled. Her messages shifted from frustrated to confused, then to something quieter, short questions like, "Are you okay?" or "Can we meet?" But I didn't owe her an explanation. Not anymore. I hadn't disappeared out of spite. I had simply stopped offering a version of myself that wasn't seen. The youth center became my new rhythm. I volunteered 3 days a week, sometimes more if they needed help fixing things, light fixtures, broken chair legs, the snack machine that jammed every other week. The kids started calling me Fix-It Ray. I liked that. It made me feel necessary in a way that wasn't transactional. They didn't ask for my time like it was owed. They received it with gratitude. One afternoon, Marcus pulled me aside after reading hour. His tone was quieter than usual, like he didn't want anyone else to hear. "You ever missed your kid?" he asked. The question hit me harder than I expected. I didn't answer right away. We sat by the windows, watching some of the younger kids chase each other in the grass. "Every day," I said finally. "But missing someone and needing them back aren't the same thing." Marcus nodded like he understood, even if he didn't fully. He was smart. Sensitive in the way boys sometimes have to hide. That night, I found myself standing in front of my drawer again, the one with Lily's photos. I opened it, stared at the frames, and closed it again without touching them. Time passed. 2 months, maybe more. The seasons shifted. Leaves turned brittle, skittering across my porch like they didn't want to settle. I got into the habit of early morning walks, stopping by the same diner on Thursdays for black coffee and eggs. The waitress knew my name. She called me Honorable. One morning, as I paid my tab, I saw Tessa at the corner of the parking lot. She wasn't alone. Lily was with her, in a too-big jacket and pink boots. They weren't coming in. They were just standing near their car, watching me. I paused mid-step. Lily saw me and waved excitedly. "Pops." My heart jumped. I smiled, reflexively. I walked over slowly. Tessa looked tired. Not the kind of tired that sleep could fix. She'd lost weight, maybe from stress, maybe from guilt. Her eyes darted to mine and then away, like she didn't know what face to put on. "Hi," she said softly. "Hi, Pops." Lily squealed again, rushing to hug me. I bent down and scooped her up, holding her close. Her arms wrapped around my neck like she'd never noticed I'd been gone. That did something to me. I wanted to cry. I didn't. When I stood up, I looked at Tessa. She was holding a paper coffee cup, hands shaking slightly. "Can we talk?" she asked. "Please." I nodded once. We walked a few feet from the car, while Lily played near the curb. "I know I hurt you," she began. I said something careless. "I didn't mean it the way it sounded." "You said exactly what you meant," I replied. My voice wasn't sharp. It was steady, quiet, resolved. She blinked rapidly, like she wasn't expecting that. I didn't realize. I didn't think you'd just disappear. I shrugged. And I didn't think I was just the babysitter. But here we are. Tessa stepped closer. I miss you, Dad. And Lily misses you. She talks about you all the time. She doesn't understand what happened. She's a child, I said. She doesn't need to understand. But you do. Her face crumpled a little. I do. I get it now. I took you for granted. I treated you like backup. And I'm sorry. I looked at her long and hard. And for a second, I saw the little girl who used to cling to my leg at school drop-off, who once sobbed when I missed her recital because I had a double shift. But that girl was long gone. This woman standing before me had cut me down with a sentence and walked away like it was nothing. I'm glad you said that, I told her. I really am. But I'm not the same man anymore, Tess. I found something out there. People who look me in the eye. Who thank me. Who don't just see what I do, but who I am. Her mouth opened, but no words came. You hurt me, I continued. And I don't say that to guilt you. I say it because it matters. Because I spent too long pretending it didn't. I needed to walk away to remember I was more than the help. So what now? She asked, tears slipping down her cheeks. I looked at Lily, who was drawing smiley faces on the fogged car window. I'll always love that little girl, I said. I'll answer when she's older, if she ever wants to find me. But you and me? We're done. I don't recognize you anymore. Not as my daughter. She sobbed, covered her mouth, shook her head. I kissed Lily on the forehead and handed her gently to Tessa. I'm glad you came, I said. But don't come again. And then I turned and walked back into the diner, heart heavy but clear. That silence I had built around myself, it wasn't a wall anymore. It was home. Father's Day used to be a quiet day for me, even before all this. Tessa never really made much of it. Maybe a card from Lily, sometimes a call if she remembered. But this year, I didn't expect anything. And still, when the knock came at 10:07 a.m., something in my chest tightened like an old hinge catching. I looked through the window. There they were. Tessa stood stiffly on my front porch, holding Lily's hand. She wore a white blouse, the same one she used to wear for job interviews back when she still needed me to babysit on a moment's notice. Lily had a handmade card clutched in both hands, pink marker bleeding through the edges. I didn't want to open the door, but I did. Hi, Pops. Lily squealed, stepping forward. Her face was sunlit innocence, unbothered by the adult tensions framing her life. I knelt, scooped her up gently. Hi, sweetheart, I said, kissing her forehead. She pulled the card out of her jacket. I made you this. It has a dog in a bow tie. I laughed, in spite of myself. That's perfect. Tessa stood behind her like a shadow. Can we come in? I didn't say anything. I stepped back, leaving the door open. They followed me into the living room, Lily skipping to the couch. I offered her the bowl of jelly beans I kept on the coffee table. She picked out the red ones with surgical precision. Tessa sat down slowly, like she was waiting to be told where. I didn't offer. Dad, she started, her voice cracking. I've been thinking about what you said. I looked out the window. She kept going. You were right. I didn't see it. I didn't see you. I just assumed you'd always be there. Because you always were. I didn't respond. Lily, oblivious to the weight in the room, climbed into my lap and whispered, Can I sleep over soon? My heart ached. Tessa noticed. She misses you. We both do. I met her eyes. Missing someone doesn't mean you get them back. She flinched like I'd struck her. I know. I want to fix it. You can't, I said. This isn't a hole you patch up. It's a foundation that cracked years ago. Then what do you want? She asked, tears welling up. I sighed. I looked at her, really looked, and saw how tired she was. Maybe even sorry. But apology doesn't restore what's been quietly eroded over time. I want peace, I said. And I have that now. You don't fit in it anymore. That's not fair, she whispered. No, I said. It's not. None of this is. You turned me into a convenience, and now that I'm gone, you realize you loved what I gave, not who I was. That's not true. It is. Silence stretched between us. The kind that says more than shouting ever could. I stood up, holding Lily gently, and walked her to the front door. Sweetheart, I said, crouching, I love you. So much. Always. But I need to rest now, okay? She looked confused. Are you sick? No. Just tired. I handed her back to Tessa, who looked at me like she was seeing a ghost. This is the last time, I said. Tessa nodded, trying to keep her face from crumpling. They left, and I stood in the doorway long after they were gone, Lily's card still in my hand, heartbreaking and mending all at once. After they left, the silence settled indifferently, not as an absence, but as a presence in its own right, full-bodied, steady, and sharp. It didn't ache like it used to. Instead, it clarified things. I wasn't lonely. I was alone. There's a difference, one I hadn't understood when I was busy chasing scraps of gratitude from the one person I thought would always see me. Now I understood it intimately. The phone stayed quiet. No more calls, no more texts, no more cards. Tessa had finally understood that I meant what I said, that I didn't need one more apology or a carefully crafted excuse. I needed space, real, lasting space, to finally hear myself think without her voice redefining what my role had always been. Still, word got around. Family has a way of spreading news faster than wildfire, even when it's news they can't quite explain. My cousin Dolores called first. She says you've disowned her, she whispered like we were conspiring. I took a breath. I told her I don't recognize her as my daughter anymore, because the woman she's become doesn't see me as her father. Dolores went quiet. Then, well, that's strong. So were the years I spent being dismissed. I heard the judgment in her pause. Not mean-spirited, just confused, maybe disappointed. But I didn't know her clarity. This was between me and the woman who used to sit in my lap and cry over skinned knees. That woman was gone. Other calls followed. Some came with the thinly veiled suggestion that I was overreacting. Others offered empathy that felt paper-thin. A few genuinely understood, friends my age, mostly. Men who'd been turned into walking wallets or built-in babysitters, only to be forgotten once their usefulness dried up. I didn't need their validation, but it was nice to know I wasn't the only one who'd woken up too late and finally had enough. At the youth center, life moved forward. Marcus won second place in the science fair and asked me to be there when they handed out certificates. He hugged me in front of his classmates. My pops, he said proudly, eyes beaming. I hadn't realized how deeply I'd settled into that role for him until he introduced me like family. The center director, Marla, pulled me aside afterward. You've made a difference here, Ray, she said. A real one. I nodded, a lump forming in my throat. I didn't come here to be needed, I said. I just came to remember what it feels like to be seen. Maybe it's the same thing, she replied. That evening, I stopped by the corner store on my way home. As I walked in, I spotted one of Tessa's friends by the frozen section, a woman named Renee who used to bring her kids over for playdates. She gave me a startled look. You know, Tessa's devastated, she said without greeting. She cries all the time. I'm sure she does, I said calmly. She didn't mean what she said. You know how she gets. Yeah, I said, pulling a carton of milk from the cooler. I do. She was under pressure. She had a father, I said, looking at her evenly. And now she doesn't. Renee stared at me, speechless. Then she looked away, suddenly very interested in a row of frozen peas. Outside, the air was warm and sticky. I took the long way home. A week later, something strange happened. A reporter from the local paper called the youth center. They were doing a story on retirement-aged volunteers, and Marla had mentioned me. She asked if I was willing to be interviewed. I said yes. We sat down for coffee, the young reporter scribbling in a notepad while I told her about the kids, the center, and how I ended up there. She asked about my family. I told her simply, I had a daughter once. But sometimes you grow in different directions. When the article came out, the headline read, The Man Who Chose to Be a Father Again. I cut it out, tucked it into the inside pocket of my wallet, and carried it with me like a quiet badge of honor. Not because I needed anyone to know my side of the story, but because I wanted to remember that my life didn't end at rejection. It began again in a different place. I heard later, through the grapevine, that Tessa saw the article, that she cried, that she called it a betrayal. That word stung, but not for the reasons she probably assumed. It stung because she didn't see that she'd betrayed me first. Not with just one sentence, but with years of eroding acknowledgement. The way she leaned on me but never leaned into me. The way I stopped being a person and became a schedule, a solution, a function. One afternoon, while organizing books at the center, Marcus asked me, "Do you ever think about going back to my old life?" I asked, "Yeah, your daughter. That stuff." I leaned against a shelf, thought about it for a long moment. "No," I said finally. "Some bridges need to burn. Otherwise, you keep walking back across them into fires you swore you'd never stand in again." He nodded, like he got it. Maybe he didn't fully. Maybe he would one day. That night, I sat on my porch watching the sky dim to a bruised violet. I felt the stillness again, that perfect quiet of a life no longer borrowed or bartered. I thought of Lily, always. She had my heart, even if I couldn't have her in my life right now. But the difference was, I wasn't breaking every time I missed her. I was just breathing through it. Peace is strange that way. It doesn't erase the ache. It just teaches you to carry it differently. I spent that morning at the park, sitting on a weather-worn bench with a small paperback open in my lap and the laughter of children ringing in the background. Not the children I once built my life around, but the ones I'd come to know through this strange new chapter. No less chaotic, no less joyful. Marcus was helping a younger boy fly a paper kite we'd built together last week. The wind wasn't strong, but they managed to keep it afloat, tugging the line with exaggerated care. I watched them like a man watching his garden grow, slow, steady, and proud. That's when the letter came. Slipped into my mailbox in a plain white envelope with no return address, but I knew the handwriting the moment I saw it. Tessa's. I brought it back to the house and set it on the kitchen table. I didn't open it right away. I let it sit there while I made tea, swept the back porch, and fixed a squeaky hinge on the pantry door. Some habits die hard. But when I finally sat down and unfolded the letter, I took my time reading every word. It was long. Too long to remember verbatim, but the tone was unmistakable. Regret, sorrow, and a kind of panic woven in between attempts at apology. She wrote about her childhood, how she used to fall asleep knowing I was always in the next room. She remembered the nights I stayed up with her when she had the flu, the time I drove 8 hours straight to get her home from college when her roommate had a breakdown. She remembered more than I thought she did. But she also tried to explain how life had buried her, how stress made her callous, how she didn't realize the damage until it was done. She ended with, "I hope one day you'll let me back in, even if just a sliver." I folded the letter carefully and placed it in the drawer next to Lily's old photos. Not in anger, not even in pain, just in acceptance. Because here's the truth, I wasn't angry anymore. I had crossed that river, trudged through all the muck of bitterness and grief, and come out the other side with something resembling peace. But peace doesn't always come with reunions. Sometimes it comes with distance. And distance doesn't mean hatred. It means preservation. I took a walk that afternoon to the youth center. Marla greeted me with a smile and a cup of lukewarm coffee the way she always did. "You good?" she asked. "I'm better than I've been in years," I said. There was a photo of me now on the wall near the front desk. Me holding a book, surrounded by 3 kids, and a paper dragon we made for a literacy event. The caption read, "Mr. Ray, volunteer, mentor, friend. Not babysitter. Not just. Not anything small." On my way out, Marcus stopped me. "You ever think about writing a book?" he asked, tossing a basketball from hand to hand. "What would I write about?" He shrugged. "Everything." I chuckled. "Maybe one day." That evening, I sat on my porch again. The sunset was spectacular, the kind of soft orange and pink blend that looks like a fire cooling down to embers. I thought about Lily, not with pain, but with warmth. I imagined her growing older, maybe one day asking real questions about why Pops vanished. Maybe reading that article. Maybe understanding, years from now, that silence can be love too, especially when spoken after years of being ignored. I had imagined this part differently once. I thought we'd all grow old together. Me, Tessa, Lily, like some kind of Norman Rockwell painting. But real life doesn't work in brushstrokes and soft light. It's jagged, complicated, and sometimes. No matter how much you give, people only see what they can take. Still, I stood by my decision. Because a man who loves too quietly becomes invisible. And I wasn't invisible anymore. As the sun dipped below the tree line, I whispered aloud, not to anyone in particular, just to the quiet around me. I was never just the babysitter. I was her father. But when that stopped meaning something to her, I had to remember what it meant to me. And with that, I went inside and made myself dinner. A real dinner. For one. But not alone. Never alone again. If this story moved you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more powerful tales about family, boundaries, and finding your worth. Leave a comment. Have you ever had to walk away to protect your peace? See you soon in the next story.